All right, let's get into this. This is the incredible story of a man who lived three totally different lives, and they all revolve around one single notorious prison. We're not just talking about the son of a blues legend here. No, this is a story about incredible highs, the absolute lowest of lows, and one of the most powerful comebacks you'll ever hear about.
So check this out. It's a total paradox, right? In 1972, he's the performer on stage. Flash forward to 86, and he's a prisoner in a cell. And now, he walks those very same halls but as a chaplain. A performer, a prisoner, a preacher, all in the exact same spot. How does that even happen?
And that's the big question we're going to unpack. I mean, the story of John Lee Hooker Jr. it's a wild ride. We're talking about a journey from living in the huge shadow of his legendary father, spiraling down into the absolute depths of addiction, and then somehow finding his way to a place he calls amazing grace.
So to really get the full picture, we got to break down these three completely separate visits to Soledad Prison in California. Each one is like a totally different chapter, a whole different life, really.
Okay, let's rewind to 1972. His dad, the legend himself, John Lee Hooker, hooks him up with a gig. He's opening a live show for the inmates at Soledad. So you see him up there on stage, he's smiling, he's singing, making a name for himself. But what you don't see is that he's actually sick as a dog, going through brutal heroin withdrawal. All he's thinking about is getting paid so he can get his next fix. Fast forward 14 years, it's 1986, and he's back at Soledad. Only this time, he's not walking onto any stage. Nope, he's being herded off the Grey Goose, that's the prison bus, to start a 16-month sentence for grand theft. Think about that. Same walls, same gun towers, same prison yard, but a completely, terrifyingly different reality.
And this quote, wow, it just paints such a vivid picture of that fall. He said he was, quote, chained around the waist, wrists, and ankles, like a recaptured runaway slave. I mean, going from a rising star to a shackled convict, it just shows you, in the starkest terms possible, how far he'd fallen.
So, you gotta be asking, how did it come to this? How did he end up there? Well, to figure that out, we need to go all the way back to his childhood in Detroit. And let me tell you, it was a tale of two completely different worlds. So on the surface, everything seemed perfect, right? His dad's song, Boom Boom, was a massive hit, which made him a local celebrity. The kids in the neighborhood even gave him the nickname Bam Bam. But behind closed doors, at home, a really deep trauma was brewing. He was just a kid, watching his mother's infidelity while his famous father was constantly out on the road.
And this quote from him, it really says it all. You can't put a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. That pain was the bullet wound, and the drugs, well, that was the Band-Aid he desperately tried to slap on it, trying to stop the bleeding from all those family secrets. But a Band-Aid was never going to be enough.
So as you can imagine, that pain had to go somewhere, and it fueled this absolutely devastating descent into addiction. What started as just a way to escape the pain quickly spiraled out of control and ended up dictating like the next 30 years of his life.
You know, it all started pretty innocently, like a lot of stories do. Childhood stuff, sniffing glue, drinking cough syrup to feel something different, but it escalated, and it escalated fast. He was chasing a high, any high, to numb that pain, and that chase led him right to the end of the line, a daily heroin habit that completely took over his life.
And once you have that kind of habit, you have to feed it. He had a gorilla on his back, and he did whatever it took. He even called himself a slick snake in the grass. We're talking everything from pickpocketing to robbing his own family and neighbors. Absolutely no one was safe from his hustle.
Well, you know where this is headed. A life of crime inevitably leads to a life in cages. His world just became this constant cycle of arrests, courtrooms, and being locked up.
And here's the thing. His life became a total revolving door. It really kicks off right here. He's just 17, and he gets busted for breaking into his own junior high school to steal typewriters. Can you believe it? And that right there, that set the pattern for the rest of his young adult life.
At one point, a judge gives him a choice: go to prison or go to this experimental drug rehab program called Synanon. And, it probably sounded like a lifeline, but it turned out to be anything but. It was a psychological trap. Synanon was notorious. We're talking brutal tactics, shaving people's heads, demanding this absolute total devotion. It basically turned into a really dangerous cult.
So what does he do? He escapes from Synanon, but that means he violated his probation. And that threat of prison time hanging over his head? It just became a reality. The judge kept her word, and bam! He sends to Jackson State Prison in Michigan, one of the toughest around. He literally just traded one type of cage for another.
But listen, this story does not end in a prison cell. Not even close. Because against all odds, after all those years of struggle, he somehow found a way out. He found a path to this incredibly powerful and very public redemption.
2. What does that number mean? That's the number of Grammy nominations he earned. Yeah, after finally getting clean, he didn't just step out of his father's shadow, he created his own spotlight. He took all that pain, all that experience, and channeled it into his music. And it was incredible, critically acclaimed blues.
And you just have to look at the titles of his albums to get it. Blues with a Vengeance, All Odds Against Me. I mean, come on. He wasn't just playing his dad's music. No way. He was telling his own story. A story of survival, of defiance, and people, the world, really started to listen.
But then, and this is the part that's just so amazing, he walked away. He walked away from it all. He gave up the successful blues career he had fought tooth and nail for, all to become a chaplain. He wanted to preach what he calls the good news. And this, right here, is what brings his entire story full circle, all the way back to Soledad.
And this final quote, it just ties everything together so perfectly. I was a dope fiend who'd had a gig, then it became my residence, and now I was going back as a chaplain of God to exemplify his amazing grace. So that third visit to Soledad, his final visit, he wasn't a performer, he wasn't a prisoner, he was a free man, a chaplain, walking back in there to give other people hope. He went back to the one place that saw his rise, his fall, and in the end, his incredible redemption. It really makes you think, what does a second or even a third chance really look like?